This is the Conscious Radio Network.
Good morning, evening, or afternoon. Welcome to Conscious Radio Network's True Ghost Stories, our special Halloween series. And we want to keep this as spooky as possible. And tonight, lead investigator, case manager, OSR volunteer, and director of operations from Tri-C Ghost Hunters out of Columbus, Ohio, joins us this evening. Lisa Roars, how you doing?
Good. Thank you so much for having me.
You are very, very welcome. And I want to dive into this, really dive into this. How did you get into paranormal investigation?
You know, I think it really started even as young as maybe 12 or 13. My first paranormal experience was more with aliens, UFOs. Um, a friend of mine and I were sitting on our couch in my living room, and right out the window, we saw this bright flash of light. We could see a disc. And we kind of looked at each other and said, "Did you see that? Is that what we think it was?" And we run outside onto the porch. And of course, by the time we got out there, nothing was there. We didn't see anything in the night sky. But, you know, here we are 35 years later or whatever. And he and I are still friends. And we still always say, "Remember that one time? We're pretty darn sure that we saw a UFO." So that's kind of how it started for me. And then I started watching UFO shows and listening to stories about UFOs. And then I guess it kind of morphed for me as ghost hunting and spirits became less taboo. And people looked a little bit, more interested than looking at you like you're crazy. So in 2008, 2009, I really started diving into it, visiting the Ohio State Reformatory, which is about an hour or two north of where I live, Columbus, Ohio. And there was no turning back from there. That's an amazing place, a great place to start your investigating career, and learn the ropes and get to experience crazy, crazy activity. So that's really where it started. And then I met the founders from our Cleveland team, Greg and Kathy Fiketic, and they invited me to be on the team. And the rest is history. I mean, Cleveland, Columbus, and Cincinnati, that's where the Tri-C comes from. I'm one of the lead investigators for the Columbus team. And we're busy. We all have day jobs, and it keeps us busy. It's like a second job. It really is. That doesn't pay.
Yeah. And that's what a lot of people don't understand and don't realize is pretty much most of our true paranormal investigators out there are doing this it does take a lot of time, a lot of your time and passion. And that's the thing. You got to really have a passion for this.
Absolutely. I mean, obviously, if there's travel involved, hotels, gas, that's all coming out of our own pockets. As many of your listeners know, ghost hunting equipment is not cheap, and there's always the next best thing that comes out with a big price tag. So it's an expensive hobby, but we are all very, very passionate about it. That's what our team members really, really share, that passion. And our core value is just to help people. Yeah. And that's what really gets us into it, keeps us going, and we're willing to spend that money. And it, it's reward too. We're helping somebody, but then it's really fun doing it as well. So we have a great team that all shares the same passion.
That is the ultimate gift to us all paranormal investigators. It is not a monetary gift. It's a gift of love. It's a gift of passion, and it's a gift of giving.
Absolutely.
And that gift that we give as paranormal investigators can mean life or death, depending on the case.
Correct. And, I think reward for us is when we get an email or a text or a phone call from a client that we've helped, saying thank you. You gave me my house back. You gave me my family back. And we continue to keep up with all of our clients from past cases as well. And it's a two-way street. They'll reach out to us, say, hey, you know, things are still great. And we'll reach out and say, hey, haven't heard from you in a while. Is everything still okay? So we're forming these long, you know, life relationships with all of our clients as well. It's pretty special.
Yeah. We're kind of like social workers.
You're right.
But
Absolutely.
on a different end of the spectrum, not
Absolutely.
noticed by you know, the other scientific disciplines out there.
Absolutely. A lot of counseling, a lot of listening, reassurance that they're not crazy. Yeah. So we do wear lots of hats as investigators.
Yep. So let's dive into your first case that you want to talk about, and explain when, where, and what happened.
Yeah. So 2008, I was not formally part of a group quite yet. And myself and a couple friends decided to go on a ghost hunt. So we were looking on the internet. We were trying to figure out what do we want to do. We really hadn't done much of anything other than the Ohio State Reformatory at that point. We found a newspaper article in the Columbus Dispatch, which is our local area newspaper, and they were running ghost hunts where for $50 or whatever, you could spend a night in a abandoned elementary school in a country town here in Ohio called Croton. So it's about an hour and a half from Columbus, where I live. And we were intrigued. We're like, well, let's go check it out. You know, so the three of us drove out there. And, you know, the second you walked in, it was one of those places where all your senses just, you know, you were on edge.
Yeah.
You know how creepy places just have a smell? It had that smell,
yeah.
You know. I'm getting the goosebumps just even thinking about walking in there, and you're immediately like, this is different than the other side of that door that I just walked through. So immediately goosebumps, uneasiness, nervousness. And then, of course, it's an abandoned elementary school, so it's really cool. You know, we're looking all around like, oh my gosh, this place is falling apart, but it's so amazing. So we were there with, it was the three of us that knew each other, and then there were some other guests there as well that we did not know. So we all kind of broke into some groups and took turns on different floors and different areas. And I can honestly tell you that every room that we went into, our equipment was going crazy, our senses were going crazy, and I'm very critical of any piece of material or equipment that we have.
Yeah.
So, you know, if a K2 goes off, I'm not just gonna be like, oh my God, it's paranormal. You know, so we really went through the motions to try to debunk things. You know, is it electrical, you know, whatever. Sounds, creepiness, all of those things. So every single room, something was happening. We'd see something out of the corner of our eye. Our K2s would go off. You name it. We'd have a recorder rolling and run it back, and you were pretty sure that something was there. You didn't know what it was saying, but something was there. So this went on for, I'd say, 6 or 8 hours. We were getting ready to wrap the night. We were in the lowest level before you get to the basement of this school. And we were basically in what used to be a girls' restroom. So there's no doors, there's no stalls. We're just sitting in a few chairs. And it's myself and my friends, Brock and Brian. I was in the middle of them. We were all sitting on 3 chairs. Brock and I were looking straight out the door, and Brian was messing around with our digital camera. Outside that door was a staircase that was coming down from the level above us. It was dark, but there was just enough ambient light from a door that was down the hall that led outside. So we could kind of see, we could make out the staircase, we could make out the door. And we were sitting there and we were doing a burst EVP session, and we played it back and it said, "Get out now." And it was a grovelly, very clear, very spooky voice. Wow. What's interesting about that clip, and that's not the spookiest thing that happened in that room. What's interesting about that clip is we did play it back. We heard it real time. I'll fast forward a little bit. A week later, we were all together and we were playing it for some of our friends. And we said, take a listen, see what you think this says. And we didn't tell anybody what we thought it said.
Yeah.
It was so clear that everybody that we played it for said, "Oh my God, that said, get out now." I'm like, exactly. So a few days later, I'm at home. I'm like, I need to copy this onto my computer so that we have a backup, blah, blah, blah. I plug in my digital recorder, audio clip's gone. Totally gone. Totally gone. So, was it paranormal? Who knows? I know I didn't erase it. I was the one in control of that digital recorder when I was playing it for all of our friends. And on a digital recorder, for all of you that use those, it's not real easy for you to delete a file. There's a couple steps you got to go through.
Sometimes more than a couple. It's like
exactly. So it's funny. I still have that digital recorder all these years later, and I have like a Post-it wrapped around it with a rubber band, just in hopes that one day I'm going to play it and it's actually there. I do check it about every 6 months, 8 months, just in case. But I'm not throwing that thing away, just in case.
Wow.
So back to, that night, we were very creeped out. We're like, oh my gosh. And especially being newer investigators, we were floored. We were like, oh my God. So do we leave right now? Do we get out now? And we're like, no, there's too much happening. We didn't want to leave. So again, we're sitting there. Brian is messing with his camera. Brock and I are looking out that doorway to the staircase. And if I would have blinked, I would have missed it. But the next thing I see on that staircase is a person, a black shadow person coming down the steps. I can't see the waist down. I can make out his shirt. He was wearing a plaid shirt.
Huh.
And his face was the side profile. But what still haunts me to this day is he didn't have a normal nose. He had like a pointy beak for a nose.
Oh.
And of course, I was like, oh my God. And really, if you would have blinked, you would have missed it. And I think I blinked and opened back up and it wasn't there. And I got so startled. My bottom actually came off the seat and I ended up on Brock's lap. And Brock is freaking out as well. And I'm like, please tell me you saw that. And he's like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. I mean, we must have said, oh my God, 50 times. And then we look at Brian and Brian's like, what? I was looking down at the camera. I totally missed it. We're like, oh my God.
Wow.
So, but Brock and I'm so glad that we did this. We had enough sense about us to say, don't say what you saw. Don't describe what you saw. Since Brian wasn't looking up, let's independently go into the other room and let's tell Brian what we saw. And then we'll see what Brian says if our stories match.
Yeah.
Our stories were dead on. We both saw that plaid shirt. We couldn't see his legs, so we basically couldn't see anything from the waist down. And we described that beak for a nose.
Now that beak, was that like similar to like the plague? Remember the old plague
No,
mask?
I know exactly what you're saying. No, it was not that. It was more thin and pointed. And I've Googled masks from, all over the world and stuff. I have not been able to find one yet that says, yeah, that's close to what we saw. So I can't explain what the relevance of that person wearing that mask, unless it was a spirit that was really sick of us and was like, I'm going to try to scare them out of here.
Yeah.
But we tried to debunk it for a long time as well. We took turns walking down the steps while the others sat. It just looked different. It was a solid mask, but it was like a smoky mask. You could not see through it.
Yeah.
But again, you could make out that plaid shirt of all the things, a plaid shirt.
Wow.
Yeah. So I still, to this day, all these years later, I tell that story. I still get the goosebumps. And when I close my eyes and I'm thinking about that, I still see the beak. And it still creeps me out to this day.
And there was enough light. There's enough ambient light within the room that, because some people go, wow, maybe it was too dark or blah, 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 blah.
Right.
It's like.
Absolutely. There was ambient light in the hall where the stairs were, coming in from a door that was down the hall. So there was just enough that, again, we could make out the spindles on the staircase. So we could see the details of the structures outside of that door. And there obviously was enough light to shed on the clothes, the beak, that type of thing. So I really have no explanation for it. And again, we tried to debunk it. Was there a live person out there messing with us? The nearest teams that we ended up finding were like 2 floors away from us. So I don't think it was a real person. I think it was a spirit.
Yeah, spirit. Now you said this is an abandoned school,
Yes.
elementary school, right?
It was an elementary school.
Now, did it still have the power hooked up to it, or was it all disconnected?
In some rooms, which we did take into consideration in those rooms that our K2s were going off and stuff.
Yeah.
And some of the K2 hits, we were actually, we could track it right to, something in the ceiling or something in a wall or something like that. But some of the a lot of the rooms did not have power.
Mm. Wow. Mm. And this is because normally the last one, one of the big hunts that I went on wouldn't be a hunt. It was more like a property-wide investigation in a mansion here in a town called Howie in the Hills. And we spent all night. And I think part of the morning and stuff. But when you go and do these investigations, is there a form of a protection that you guys do, a prayer that you start off the evening with, a blessing?
Yeah.
In order
Each one of us are different, and some, different religions, different backgrounds. I was actually raised Catholic, which is ironic because my Catholic family members think that I'm going to hell for investigating and ghost hunting, because that is against our religion. But then once they get to know why I do it and that I'm actually trying to help people, they kind of cut me some slack. But I just really lean back on that faith. I never do an investigation without my crucifix, my St. Michael. I have like a St. Michael coin and one that's St. Christopher.
Yeah.
So those 3 things are always with me. And usually in the car before I hop out on a property, I'll usually, say a quiet prayer to me, kind of envision a protection of light around me. And then even on the tail end, when I'm leaving a property, I out loud say, you are not allowed to come home with me. This is your home. No one is welcome to hitch a ride with me. You stay here. And, knock on wood, most of the time that takes care of it. The few times that I've forgotten to say that little spiel, once or twice, I'll be driving. And this did happen leaving Ohio State Reformatory one time a few years ago. I forgot to say it in the car. It was like 5 a.m. It was a late night. And I pulled up to the first stop sign after leaving the property and glanced up at my rearview mirror. And for a split second, I thought there was a man in my backseat.
Whoa.
So I literally, before I even went through that stop sign, I'm like, oh, you're not allowed to come with me. No. This is your home. You're not coming home with me. And then I was fine. But yeah, so that's kind of my technique. But everybody's a little different on their level of spirituality. And, some meditate before and after, some sage themselves, some anoint themselves with blessed holy water or oil. So everybody's different.
Yeah. Do you guys ever use bring in a psychic medium, or do you have one on staff to corroborate the information after?
Yeah, we actually have a few different psychics. And I think what is really unique about our team is all of our psychics are very different from one another. They all have, their gift is a little bit different from one another. So one can really tap into a deceased person and tell you, here's what's going on with that person. Here's what they're saying. Then we have others that can really tap into objects and hold it and see and feel history from that object. And then we have others that are just really empaths and can pick up on the emotions, not only of other team members, but our clients as well. So, we're very blessed to have such a dynamic group. And as a lead investigator and a case manager, what I try to do is, since every case is so different, depending on what I feel the needs are of that particular case, I'll kind of go to that psychic or medium or multiple of them and say, I think that you're best suited for this case, and here's why. And with those members, we don't tell them anything. As far as the psychic mediums, we don't tell them anything going into a case. They have an address and that's it. Mm-hmm. A lot of times they won't even know if it's a business or residence until they get there. That's how they prefer it. We actually have a private investigation in an old farmhouse tomorrow night, and the psychic medium that's joining us had asked, Lisa, can you show up there a little bit early with me before the rest of the team comes? I want to walk in. I want to walk the property before the whole team's there, just so I can focus on the energy that's there and kind of not get distracted by all of our energy once we get there. So she and I are going to get there about a half hour early, walk the property just with the family there, and she and I, just so she can get that kind of unfiltered, impressions, and then we'll go from there. And again, through the night, I won't tell her anything about my discussions with the homeowner or the claims or anything. Throughout the night, she'll probably question me, hey, I'm picking up on this, or does this make sense? And I usually will confirm or deny it for them. Every once in a while, they'll tell me to go in a little bit more detail about whatever they just asked me about. But for the most part, they don't want to know. And it just really proves the talent and gift of our psychics and mediums, because, they're not 100% on the nose, but my gosh, they're good. They're really good. And they'll say something, I'm like, wow, I don't even know how you got that. So that just, again, they're one of our tools as well. Just like our K2s, our recorders, our cameras, whatever, they are another tool in our toolbox that we lean on. And we use them to collaborate things that are showing up on our equipment as well. So we don't just jump to any conclusions just solely based on what they're saying or feeling, but they, in conjunction with our other equipment, they're just another tool that we depend on.
Absolutely. Before we go to the next story or topic or the next case, we're going to take a quick 1-minute break to plug one of our partners and sponsors during this Halloween season, House of Dolls Midnight Horror Show. Very intriguing, very cool. So we will be right back. We'll be back in about a minute.
Greetings, doll lovers and horror fans. I am Master Dolly, the Doll Master, inviting you to my house of dolls, where the dolls come alive and the horror begins.
Wow. That ain't spooky enough.
That was terrifying. I'm going to have
Right?
nightmares tonight.
Whoa. Oh man. Yeah. That's I've yet to go to the mansion. So I'll let you know if it's if we got some spirits lingering in there. They got to be if you see that. So
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah. Let's get on to the next case. What is the next spookiest case that you like to share with us?
So I have to talk about the Ohio State Reformatory. You know, a lot of us on the team are volunteers there. We volunteer a lot of our time there. And, again, that's over an hour and a half from Columbus, but I do drive up there as often as I can to either help out with the day tours, answering questions for guests, or going and actually helping with the paranormal events as well. They do ghost walks, they do private ghost hunts, they do public ghost hunts. So there's lots of great events and stuff up there that I love volunteering for. And you just fall in love with the building. It's beautiful. It's historic. It looks like a big castle. It's like my second home. It just draws me in. I've been investigating there since, like I said, 08, 09. I just absolutely love the place. So when the opportunity came to me that I would be able to be a volunteer, I was very honored that I was given that opportunity. I've been a volunteer there for almost 5 years. And that place never disappoints. And I think that my friends and family probably get sick of hearing me talk about the Ohio State Reformatory because I do talk about it all the time. Yeah. But it's hands down probably the most haunted place I've ever investigated. And our team has investigated hundreds and hundreds of places. Yeah. I just think that there's so much energy and history trapped in those walls. And again, I mentioned, I feel like it's my second home. I always go in there. I always audibly say, hello guys, remember me? I'm Lisa. Haven't been here in a few weeks. Tonight's going to be a ghost hunt. So there'll be lots of people in your house. Don't worry. We'll make sure that they're respectful. And we really feel like they get to know us.
That was going to beg my next question is I bet they all know your name now.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've even had my name come up on like spirit box sessions and stuff. And I know other team members have had that with their name as well. So yeah, I think that they remember us and know us. And, we build that trust with them. They know that we're going to come into their house. We're going to be respectful. We're not provoking. We're talking to them like I'm talking to you, like another human being. We talk about sports. We talk about current events. Sometimes we talk about politics, because I'm sure it gets really boring for them. What's your name? When did you die or how did you die? Yeah. I'm sure they get that all the time. So we make it a point when we're in there not to ask those questions. We try to talk to them like you and I are talking. So, occasionally I'm there as a guest, or I get to go and not actually work, and I get to investigate. And again, there's always at least one little thing that happens when you're there, at least one. Sometimes it's more like 5 or 10, which in itself is odd because I think, as you could go on site and be there for 10 hours and not see anything, not feel anything, not capture any evidence whatsoever. I mean, that's actually the norm. And I think a lot of people don't realize when these paranormal shows go on site and stuff, they're there for 1, 2, 3 weeks, just to capture enough to fill in 42 minutes of a show. So, that is the norm. But Ohio State Reformatory, like I said, it's as many times as I'm there, there's always at least one thing that happens. Probably the most profound thing that ever happened to me a few years back. I was there as a guest, not working that night. And myself and a friend of mine were on the 6th tier of one of the cell blocks. And it was very, very dark. The air was still. It was kind of warm outside, kind of humid. No wind, no nothing. And we put away the flashlights, which if anybody's ever been there, it's extremely dark when you're up on those cell blocks. There is no light, very, very little light, ambient light coming from the outside, but it was a very dark night. So we're walking down there, and I think the first creepy thing is any time that you're there and you're walking those cell blocks, again, listening to your senses, you'll be fine passing 1, 2, 10, 15 cells, and then you'll just come to a cell that has a completely different vibe. Like it creeps you out, and then you kind of hurry past it, and the next one's fine. And then you'll kind of step back and you're like, oh, I don't know why it feels so different than the others. So that particular night, he was actually leading, and the halls of the cell blocks are very, very narrow. So you can't really walk side by side. So he was in front of me, I was behind. So he was kind of hitting the cells before me. And we were probably 20, 30 cells in, and he stops. And just as he stopped, I said, do you smell that? And he was like, that's why I stopped. We smelled cigarette smoke. Now, neither of us smoke, so it wasn't on our clothes or anything. It wasn't there before, and it was so strong. So we were like, God, that is super weird. Yes, we both totally smell that. We kind of stepped forward a couple more cells, and it was gone. As fast as it came up, it was gone.
Wow.
So we kind of stood there for a second, and just to see if it would come back. And the next thing I know, this side was closest to the cells. Something went like this to my hair. Not only did I feel it, I could see it out of the corner of my eye. I was wearing it down just like I am now. And something physically had to have reached out of one of the cells and went like this.
Wow.
And I mean, again, I'm calm and cool about it right now, but when you're in the dark, you just smelled the cigarette smoke, you're kind of on edge. I know that there's no living person behind me, and the only living person anywhere near me is right in front of me, and I can see him. So yeah, I was like, oh my God, I was both so excited and so frightened. I said, oh my God, I said, something just grabbed my hair. It tossed it up. It was so dark that he couldn't see my hair. But he was like, are you serious? And I'm like, I said, I am so dead serious. I would not lie to you. And then I said, I'm really done with this cell block. So we turned on the flashlights and we kind of hurried down, which I know other ghost hunters are going to be like, oh my God, you should have stayed there and investigated more. No, I was done. When you physically touched, as cool as that was, I was just like, yeah, I'm good. I'm done, I think. But
Yeah.
again, I think the spirits remember us. I think they recognize us. And to further drive that point home, I've been working a lot more of the day shifts these days in the past several months, trying to brush up on my history of the place just so I can give a more full story to our guests when I'm helping out at the paranormal events. So the first day I was there working a day tour, I'm just really following along. I'm making sure that no guests get lost and don't wander off, that type of thing. And I really don't have a speaking part. I'm not really saying anything. I'm just really sitting there and just making sure our guests are safe. And the very first time I was working a day tour, I felt somebody poking me on my leg. And it was almost like, hello, you haven't acknowledged me. And I just sat there and kind of smirked. And of course I couldn't say anything because, there's a tour guide up there and he's doing his spiel to the group. And so I just kind of laughed, but it wasn't hard. I mean, it was hard, but it wasn't like I'm hurting you. It really was like, hello, you're ignoring me. So fast forward like another hour, I'm in a totally different part of the prison. And again, I'm sitting there saying nothing. I haven't acknowledged or said hello to any of my spiritual friends there. But something pulled the back of my hair. It was enough that I went like this, and I looked around thinking a guest was trying to get my attention or something. Nobody was behind me. I wasn't leaned up against a wall or anything like that. So I really couldn't explain that. But in my mind, it's them saying, you're ignoring me. And usually you talk to me a lot and you're not saying hello. So again, I kind of give them a smirk and a nod. And so now the subsequent times I've been there during the day, when I go in, I make sure I audibly say, hey, I'm here. I'm helping with the day tours. I won't be able to talk to you as much as normal, but hello, I know you're there, and have a great day. So
Yeah.
I'm back to trying to acknowledge them as much as possible.
Yeah, that's evidence alone. I mean, you having to capture that and try to get it on camera and stuff, like, who needs that? It's a
Exactly.
personal gratification. Go, yep, it exists. That's all I need.
Absolutely. And a lot of times when we are doing, some like a fun investigation where we're not having to report back to a client or anything like that, a lot of times we'll use little to no equipment because we just want to be there to experience it. And,
Mhm.
because we're not trying to prove it to anybody. Everybody has their different opinions. Some people believe, some people are skeptics. I don't care. I'm not here to convince you. So a lot of these places that we go, it's just purely for our own experience, and it's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. And for the amount of years that you have been doing this, I mean, it has obviously built up, lack of a better word, immunity of fear. Because if this would have happened to anybody off the street that doesn't experience this, you could imagine how they would react.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we've had, even guests at the Ohio State Reformatory or other places that don't do this on a regular basis. And they've actually run out of the place and not come back in. We've
Mm.
had to walk people out to their cars before on investigations. There, one little thing will happen, and it's a big thing to them. And they're like, I'm done. I'm out of here.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I'd be lying if I said I don't still get creeped out sometimes. There have been some places where I'm like, oh, I just don't like the feeling in here, and I kind of walk quickly out of the room. So yeah, I'd be lying if I said I don't get spooked out or wigged out or anything. I
Yeah.
do. I absolutely do. And sometimes I just feel a little braver than other times. So
Yeah. And sometimes too, it's like, yeah, I guess it is a form of bravery. Because, it happens to me a lot, but it's the body's natural physiology and reaction of
mhm,
that fight or flight mechanism. We
absolutely.
get
And that
feared,
rush of adrenaline.
yeah, and it's like, "Oh my god, there's something here. There's something's watching me, but I can't see it. What is it? Where is it?" And
Yeah.
it's like we have to submit to that and go, "All right, just accept it, say hi, and, and
Yeah. And I tend to
and
be
acknowledge
braver.
it."
Yeah, absolutely. Acknowledge it. I tend to be braver when there's more than just me and one other person. We usually don't investigate by ourselves just for safety reasons, but you know, my comfort is more with two others besides me. I feel like there's more bravery with numbers, at
Yeah.
least for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, going in alone is, yeah, it's kinda like going scuba diving alone. You gotta have a scuba diving but yeah, a dive
Yes,
buddy because you don't know if you're gonna come back or not.
exactly. Absolutely.
Uh, Now in any of these cases, have you ever experienced any unusual events that were sort of recordable? Like, missing time is most commonly associated with UFO cases and extraterrestrials and stuff like that.
Mhm.
But I have heard some cases of missing time when you're on certain properties that are, alleged haunted, where time goes extremely quickly
Mhm.
or time slows down.
Mhm.
Have you ever experienced anything like that?
I have not. I've definitely talked to people who have explained that phenomenon. No, I have not, and I'm actually hopeful that tomorrow might be one of those opportunities. I told you tomorrow night we have a private residential investigation, and we usually don't investigate outside just because there's so much noise contamination. Well, this is a farmhouse. They're away from lots of things,
Mhm.
no nearby neighbors. And they have reports not only inside the house, but also of noises coming from the woods behind their
Mm.
house. So obviously the first thing we're going to see is, can we duplicate it? Is it an animal, a deer, whatever. But one thing I'm intrigued about is they hear these screams.
Ooh.
And of course, my mind goes right to like a banshee.
Yeah.
So I'm so hopeful that tomorrow that's just going to be such a different case than we're used to, inside and out. And then the whole entire property, I want to say it's like 5 or 6 acres. So I don't know, fingers crossed that maybe we can have some experience with missing time or something along those lines. But yeah, this is going to be a very different case than what we've done in the past. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I've never come across like a true banshee or anything like that. And who knows, it could just be somebody from a neighboring property or something messing with the homeowners that live there. So of course we're going to go through all of those steps to find a logical explanation before we go straight to the paranormal answer.
Yeah. Yeah. I used to use, it's been a long time. I think I still have the camera. I used to use the full spectrum video, which is, it's kind of interesting for those who are not familiar with the full spectrum. You get like this purplish hue of the picture, but you get to see a lot more colors involved, especially when you're filming with no light. It's just infrared. Do you use any equipment like that?
Yeah, several of our team members actually use that technology. And again, visual evidence is so rare. But we have captured some questionable things. Shadow, like why is there a shadow there? Is it a shadow of a piece of furniture that was in that shot or something like that? So nothing that I'd be so confident in that I would call paranormal, but we definitely have had some head scratchers using that equipment.
Yeah. Yeah. What seems to be the most I'd say the most telling evidence that you get, whether it's video or EVP? I know the answer, but maybe our
Yeah,
guests don't know.
definitely EVP. Most of our evidence, I'd say 98% of the evidence, things that we actually say or call evidence, are coming from our digital recorders. And what we do is whoever's in the room, and we try to keep our groups somewhat small so that we can control the contamination. But anybody that's in that room needs to be running their digital recorder.
Yeah.
So that we can compare and say, hey, I think I got something at this timestamp or whatever. Will you go back and listen? And a lot of times that's how we debunk things. That person will listen and was like, oh yeah, I think I sighed, or I coughed or something like that. But that's definitely where we have captured a lot of our evidence. One of our residential cases, a really creepy EVP that I captured, I said, hey, my name is Lisa. I'm going to put my digital recorder right here. Feel free to come over and talk to me if you'd like. The EVP that we capture within 5 seconds of me saying that is, I'm standing right next to you. And it's a whisper. And it's, again, really creepy. Again, there go my goosebumps. But obviously you're not hearing it in real time, and you listen to the other audio devices. In that case, we had 3 other people in the room. They didn't capture it on theirs, so I knew that it was very localized to my recorder, and I know I didn't say it, so I gotta mark that as paranormal and evidence.
Absolutely. And now, is the group continuously growing? You getting more people coming in? And
Absolutely. On our website, there's actually a place there where you can apply to be on our team. And we kind of weed through those, like I said, and with Cleveland, Columbus, and Cincinnati, we'll look where geographically that person is located, and then we'll give that to those team leads in that area. And my process is I usually schedule a Zoom call with them. I kind of look over their resume, if you will, on their experience, why they want to join, We actually have a question on there, what do you think of orbs, just to see what their opinion is of orbs. And I'll schedule a Zoom call. And, I feel a lot better seeing them, and I just feel like I'm connecting a lot better to them that way than just over a phone when I can't see them. And we really, a lot of times we'll chat, maybe not even about the paranormal, but, what do you do for work? How's your family life? Whatever. What do you do in your spare time? What do you enjoy doing? And just from that conversation, usually I take about an hour interview, if you want to call it that, just to get vibes off of them, and see if they're engaged and somebody that I want to be representing our team. We work really, really hard to have a good reputation. And I think we've all done a very, very good job of that. So usually, after that interview, I will talk to some of the other team leads on the team and say, hey, I just met with this person and I think that they're going to be a great addition to the team, kind of get their blessing. And then we basically onboard them. And some team members that we bring on have previous investigative experience, and some do not. And there's pros and cons to both those. I mean, obviously, with no experience, you're really starting from the ground level. But then I like to say, well, they haven't formed any bad habits yet. And we can kind of take them under our wing and really show them the ropes. But then it is really nice to have some seasoned investigators. They're coming in with a lot of equipment already, a lot of experience, and their own techniques, which is really nice. We're always looking for new techniques, and sometimes our techniques get stale and old because it's the same group of people. You bring in another person with previous experience, whether on their own investigating or with a different paranormal group, and they'll come in with their own methods, if you will. And so I think that's a nice rounding out of the team as well.
Yeah, and then doing background checks too.
We do. Thank you for mentioning that. All of our members are background checked every single year. A lot of these people that are asking us to come into their home or their private business, they're literally handing us the keys and they're leaving for 6 hours or 10 hours. So we want to make sure that they feel comfortable with us, that level of comfort that we are all background checked. And some people aren't comfortable just handing over the keys and leaving. Some people want to stay. I totally get that. I wouldn't want strangers in my house, even if they were background checked. Yeah. So that's fine. Every case is different. But we do get background checked every single year. Any dings that come up on somebody's report, they are not asked to join our team. That's just not, again, it goes back to that reputation. We have a reputation to uphold, and we want our clients to feel comfortable with us as individuals.
Absolutely. Yeah. Keeping the trust and keeping the integrity.
Yes.
Yeah, because once that's tarnished, very hard to get that back.
In the paranormal community, people talk all the time. So if they're going to talk about Tri-C ghost hunters, I want it to all be good. And I think, like I said, we've done a good job of building that reputation, and I think that everybody has good things to say about us.
Absolutely. Well, that brings us to the close of our show. But welcome back anytime. Any of the other investigators, we can do a group presentation and stuff like that.
Great.
And kind of
thank you.
maybe do a special. I want to do this every year. I was going to do this last year, but something happened. I was too busy getting the regular show together, and then finally I'm like, actually just 2 months ago, I was like, let me start building on this now. Get everything ready. That way I don't have to worry about it at last minute for presentation.
Right.
So, but we could do something, between now and next October, put together another show and stuff.
Yeah, I would love that.
For a regular programming, which is called the Seance.
Oh.
Which is interesting because that's what paranormal, when we go and speak to spirit, that's what we're doing. We're having a seance.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Lisa, thank you very much for joining us today. And
thank you for having me.
You are very welcome. Say hi to the rest of the crew for me, and good luck with the investigation tomorrow night.
Thank you.
And if you have any evidence that you would like to share, that you're allowed to share, and is disclosed, more than welcome to share that with us on one of our regular programs. So,
Will do.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Cool. Thank you, everybody, for joining us on True Ghost Stories. And you have a happy Halloween, if it isn't already. Good night now. Where are we?